3 jobs, no rest. That was my grind, my routine, my prison. I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m., lace up my boots, and hit the factory by 6. 10 hours of heat, grease, and grueling repetition. After that, it was straight to HVAC calls to neighborhoods I could never afford. Nights, deliveries, Uber Eats, groceries, anything to get by, no sleep, just miles of road, blinking lights, fast food bags. But I did it all for love. Tessa was my wife. Still is, technically. We met when she was part-time, at a bookstore, working toward her master's in psychology. She made you feel seen, even if you were covered in dirt and exhausted. She told me once, "You make hard things look easy." That stuck with me like a promise. When she told me about her $61,000 student loan, I didn't hesitate. "We'll take care of it," I said. And I did. Every shift, every burnt hand, every missed meal, all of it was for her, for us. I didn't mind the grind, the empty nights. I believed in her. But when that loan was finally paid off, when I thought it was over, I came home expecting something, a smile, a thank you, maybe even a hug. Instead, I got this. "If you really loved me," she said, "you'd pay off Maya's loans too." My chest tightened. I had just spent 3 years sacrificing everything, and now it wasn't enough. She didn't flinch. "Family takes care of family. If you truly love me, you'll do this." That's when it hit me. I wasn't building a future. I was feeding an insatiable need. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out without a word. I needed to remember who I was before I lost myself for her. I was just a walking wallet. Tessa called an hour later, while I was tightening a coupling in a crawl space. I ignored the first ring, but she tried again. I answered not because I wanted to talk, but because I knew she'd keep calling until I did. "You're being dramatic," she said, skipping any greeting. "No," I replied. "I'm being quiet. That's different." She sighed. "Look, I know you're upset, but this is just one more step, one more favor for the people we care about." "One more step?" I repeated slowly. "Tessa, you don't even realize what you're saying. You're treating 3 years of my life like a warm-up," she huffed, clearly impatient. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" I asked. "Tell me, because I haven't had a real weekend in over 1,000 days. I've been eating gas station, sandwiches, falling asleep in my car, all so you could finish your degree. I thought we were in this together. Now you're handing out my wallet like a prize." There was a pause on the other end. "You're overreacting," I laughed bitterly. "That's it? Not, 'I'm sorry'? Not, 'let's talk'? Just, you're overreacting?" "You're twisting this into something it's not," she snapped. "Maya's family?" I said, my voice low. "She's your sister. She looked out for you when you had nothing." "You don't get it." "No," I said softly. "I guess I don't understand what it's like to demand from people who are barely holding it together." The line fell silent. "I never asked you to take 3 jobs," she muttered after a beat. "No," I replied, "but you sure as hell didn't stop me." I ended the call before she could say anything else. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because everything felt like it was falling apart too fast to catch. I stared at the ceiling, hoping for some invisible answer to appear. But all I kept thinking about was Maya's text, the sparkles, the Venmo handle. It wasn't just entitlement, it was expectation. I didn't know if Tessa had raised Maya that way, or if that whole family had always been like this. What terrified me more than anything was how easy it was for them to act like I owed them something. I thought about all the times I'd said yes when I should have said no, missing my best friend's wedding to work overtime, letting Tessa use our savings for Maya's birthday weekend, even though we were behind on rent, skipping Christmas with my own family because Tessa didn't want to deal with the travel. I hadn't been loving her. I'd been disappearing piece by piece until there was hardly anything left of me. I didn't even realize the moment I stopped being a husband and started being a service. Now, Here I was, lying next to a woman who saw my exhaustion as currency, who viewed my sacrifice not as love, but as leverage. I reached for my phone and scrolled through the messages again. Maya had sent a third one. "Don't ghost me, LOL." Tessa had said, "You're just taking time to process." I stared at the text for a while, then opened Venmo, not to send anything but to block her, because it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about choosing not to be used. The next morning, I didn't reach for my work boots. Just sitting there, breathing, felt like rebellion. For 3 years, my body had moved on autopilot. Bed, shower, uniform, keys, grind. But today, I just sat at the edge of the mattress, listening to the silence. I walked into the kitchen, poured black coffee, and opened my laptop. My hand hovered over the trackpad. Then I typed the loan company's name. I still had the confirmation email from the final payment, the green check mark, paid in full, a badge of sacrifice no one clapped for. I dialed the loan company, Can. "I help you?" the agent asked. "Yes," I replied calmly. "My name's Malik Rowan. I'm the payer on an account I recently cleared. I need to reverse a payment." "Are you requesting a refund?" "That's right," I said. "That last payment hasn't processed yet. I'd like to stop it and have the amount returned." She put me on hold. I sipped my coffee, heart steady. No rage, no panic, just precision. It felt like unwinding a rope that had been choking me for years. The agent came back. "I've placed a hold. You'll get a follow-up within 3 business days." I thanked her, hung up, and called the bank. I canceled 3 auto-pay setups and closed a joint credit card account. "No longer needed," I said. Then I opened a solo account, cleaned my name, my terms. I sat, not scrolling, not planning, not racing, just sitting, feeling the morning sun stretch across the tile. I hadn't felt stillness in years. It didn't feel empty. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for too long. I looked around the apartment, our apartment, wedding photos, a snapshot from Myrtle Beach. I didn't tear anything down. I just looked at it knowing it wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never had been. I grabbed my laptop again and opened a travel site. I typed Montana without thinking. Pine trees, silence. A place big enough to hold whatever pieces of me were left. I booked a one-way ticket. Packed light. Just essentials. Clothes, my journal, the small wooden box my father left me before he died. Inside were the letters he wrote to my mother during his deployment. I hadn't opened that box in years, but it reminded me that real sacrifice, shared with someone who honors it, becomes something beautiful, not currency. I didn't leave a note. What was left to say? I'd already spoken my truth in sweat, sleepless nights, and overdraft fees, and none of it was heard. The airport was busy, families rushing, businessmen pacing, teenagers laughing. I walked through the terminal slowly, like each step was rewiring me to move for myself again. My phone buzzed once, then again. Calls, texts, voicemails. I let it ring. I powered off my phone as I stood in line for security. When I boarded the plane, I looked out the window. This wasn't a breakdown. This wasn't abandonment. This was me choosing not to bleed for people who only brought knives. As the plane rose, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. When I landed in Montana, I powered my phone on briefly. Notifications flooded in, 175 missed calls. Tessa's name dominated the list. I scrolled absently, then powered the phone off again. At the hotel, I stepped into the silence. A king bed, flannel sheets, a window overlooking a frozen creek. Absolute quiet. It felt like the world had paused with me. I dropped my bag, kicked off my boots, and lay back on the bed, arms stretched wide. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for another request. I didn't check my phone again. I didn't need the noise, but curiosity crept in. I powered it on, opened the voicemail tab. Tessa's message came through nearly 6 minutes long. She cried, apologized, begged me to call, but I deleted it. Not out of hate, but because I finally understood. Her need didn't make it my responsibility. I stared at the phone for a moment longer, then placed it face down. I stood up, stretched. They were reacting now, not because they understood, but because they lost control. For the first time, I felt free. Outside, the world was thick and quiet. I thought about Jess's last message and Maya's constant expectations. Rent, insurance, down payments. There was no end. For the first time in years, I let the bucket fill no more. I stepped outside, boots crunching in the snow, and looked at the sky. It was cold, clean, a sharp contrast to everything I'd left behind. I let the anger, the guilt, fade. All those years of holding a life together that drained me. Here, under the open sky, I was just Malik, breathing easy. Back in Sekir, my room. Jess had one more message. If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me. You're not alone. I turned my phone off, crawled under the blankets, and slept deeply. No dreams. The next morning, the mirror was small, fogged from the steam, framed in rough pine. I stood barefoot, wrapped in a towel. No uniform, no exhaustion lines. Just me. The last time I'd looked, it was rushed, checking for nicks before running out the door at 5 a.m. But now, stillness. For the first time, I saw a man who'd finally said no. I dressed quickly, stepped outside. The snow was powdery, quiet. I grabbed my journal, my coat, and wandered a trail behind the lodge. There was no purpose, no deadline, just steps, each one leaving behind a little more of the past. I found a stump near a frozen creek, sat, and wrote, Day 3. The man in the mirror isn't tired anymore. He looks like he just came back from the dead. I paused, added, I used to think breaking meant failure, but maybe it's the body cracking, open to let the truth out. Then I called Darren. It had been years. We weren't close, but we were blood. I didn't know if he'd pick up, but he did. Hello, it's Malik. We talked. No edits. No trying to make myself look noble. Just the truth. He listened, and when I finished, he said something that stuck. It's about damn time you stopped. Giving receipts for your love. That's not love, bro. That's a transaction. We talked for an hour about the old neighborhood, his kids, how he'd seen my wedding photos and knew I looked worn out, even when I was smiling. I didn't realize how much I needed that voice, a tether to who I was before I lost myself. When we hung up, he said, Come visit when you're ready. No expectations. Just family. I stood there for a while, staring at the trees. The wind whispered through the branches, and I remembered I have value outside of usefulness. I'm not a walking solution. I'm a man. Back at the lodge, I stripped off my cold layers, made tea, and sat by the fire. I opened the journal again. Day 3, continued, called Darren. Cried a little when he said, I miss you. I hadn't. Realized how long it had been since someone missed me for me, not for what I could give. The phone sat beside me, silent. I hadn't turned it on in days, not for news or notifications. The only time I measured time was by the sun on the snow, the hush of the trees at dusk. But then, that morning, the phone buzzed. One new voicemail from Tessa. I stared at it. I could have deleted it, ignored it, but part of me pressed play. Her voice cracked through the speaker. Malik, I don't even know if you'll listen to this. I don't blame you if you don't, but I need to say this. I listened as she apologized, as she admitted she leaned on me because it was easier than facing herself. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I felt clarity. I didn't need closure. I didn't need explanations. What I needed was air, and now, after years of suffocating, I had it. I deleted the message, not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to respond to. She'd said her piece, and I had mine. I walked outside, the snow muffling everything. I wasn't her savior. I wasn't her solution. I wasn't returning. And that voicemail? It was the last time she'd speak to the version of me who didn't know his worth. I never replied to the message, to the texts, or the concerned emails. I didn't need closure. I needed space, and I had it. I didn't check the loan refund or my bank app. I knew it had gone through, and that was enough. I transferred the money to a new account, one with no ties to Tessa. I didn't owe anyone anything. I began to dream again, really dream. Not just about surviving, but building something that would last, something of my own. I called a contractor, pitched an idea for modular solar kits for people who wanted off-grid living. It wasn't a business yet, but it was a start, and starts didn't scare me anymore. I whispered, "Boundaries aren't cruel, they're sacred." By the fire that night, I wrote, "Love isn't a transaction. Kindness isn't currency. You don't need to bleed to be worthy. No fanfare, just the quiet of a man reclaiming his life." I thought of Tessa, not with anger, but with clarity. She taught me something, not through affection, but through its absence. I once believed being a good man meant always giving, always stepping in. But good men aren't meant to be drained and discarded. We're not utilities. We're people with limits. She hadn't respected mine, and that wasn't love. It was convenience. I stopped justifying kindness as love. I stopped performing for approval I'd never receive. I stopped wondering if I should have handled it differently because it wouldn't have mattered to her. But it mattered to me. Now, each morning, I woke to fresh mountain air, a silence that felt earned. I wanted peace, partnership, and to see a man who hadn't disappeared in the mirror. Weeks passed, and I found a rhythm in the quiet, hiking, designing, and drawing plans for my future. I hadn't thought of Tessa until the text came. Standing in the woods, I read, "You'll regret leaving me like this." I didn't feel anger or guilt, just a slow exhale. It was her last move, and it landed like a pebble in an ocean I no longer swam in. I deleted it without a second thought. The last thread of that life, gone. I packed up my things in 10 minutes. When you don't live to please others, you need little to feel whole. I stepped outside, no goodbyes, just the trail and me. Halfway down the slope, my phone buzzed again. This time, a message request. "You don't know me, but we have something in common. Her name is Maya." I paused, read it again. Someone else had walked the same path I had. I smiled. Healing isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's realizing you weren't crazy, that your exhaustion had roots. I didn't know if I'd respond, but I knew one thing. I wasn't alone. There were others who had learned that saying no isn't weakness. It's survival. I kept walking, the sky ahead wide, the trail leading to something bigger. A life I didn't have to pay for with pieces of myself. A life where I decided who could love me.